Hello, everyone. My name is Electa Barr, and I am a math teacher at Benford Middle School. This is RPS at home, and it is week 9, day 2. So, to continue the same standard that we worked on previously, we are on SOL 6.9, where we're talking about congruence of polygons. And once again, you will need paper and pencil for today. So here's our vocabulary again. We really dived into what a polygon is yesterday, and we definitely kind of went into congruence yesterday as well. We want to remember that we use this symbol for congruence, and we want to remember that congruence means that a shape has the exact same size and the same angle shape, okay, or the same shape. And then we also want to remember that a polygon is a closed figure that has at least 3 line segments that do not cross. We will also speak a little bit on symmetry and line segment as the lesson goes on. So to kind of go back to what we did yesterday, we're going to do a couple more practice problems. So here's practice problem number 1. It says to look at the figure below. Which of the following figures is congruent to this figure? So looking at this particular figure, we can see that it is a 3-sided shape, which we would call a triangle. And our option choices are also 3-sided shapes, which are also triangles. So we can't necessarily eliminate an option based off of the amount of sides that the shape has. But what we can look at is our figure. We can see that our figure, all sides are equal here. All sides are equal here, okay? So if we look at our option choices, what do we know? What can we find out? Well, we can see that the triangle has 2 sides and 2 angles that are congruent, which is going to eliminate options B and option C. We can see here that both of these have 2 sides that are definitely not congruent to each other. And then that leaves option D, which is an isosceles triangle. However, the sides are longer than the one that is given, and that's kind of evident here. So that leaves us with our answer being solution A. So practice problem number 2. Which figure is congruent to the figure shown? So remember, congruent means having the same shape and the same size. And so by looking at our given figure, we can kind of identify 2 that we can eliminate. And we can see that there are 2 options for sure that are definitely not the same size as our given shape. So we would want to eliminate B, option B, and option D. And also once we have eliminated those, we're given option A and C. We can see that option A and C, the double arrows are turned vertically, so it kind of make it a little tricky to really see the size. But we can see that the length here is longer than our length here, which means our solution is C, option C. Practice problem number 3. We're going to do one more. Which pair of shapes is congruent? So same thing here. Looking here, we're looking for 2 shapes that have the exact same size and the exact same shape. So what can I eliminate first? Well, I can see that in option D, this half circle is a little longer or wider or shorter than this one. So we know that 2 shapes for 2 shapes to be congruent, they must be also the same size. So we're going to eliminate option B and option D. So for things to be congruent, it has to be the same size. These are not the same size here, and these are not the same size here. And that's pretty evident. And then we're left with A and C. Once again, if we look at A, we can really tell, C, we can really tell that both of these shapes are very much congruent. Option A, we cannot say that. Option A, we have a right triangle and we have an equilateral triangle. So our option here is C. So before we continue, we're going to take a brain break. And so I want you guys to stop, watch this quick video, and I want to see if you guys can do the Tootsie slide. All right, so I'm glad we had an opportunity to get a brain break, um, let ourselves loose a little bit, and now we're going to get back to work and we're going to do some independent practice. So here's our practice question. We want to answer the following question. Is the shape a regular or irregular polygon? We are given 8 different shapes, and what I want you to do is to figure out, are these shapes regular or irregular? So remember, we spoke about both of those 2 different types of polygons in the previous lesson. Remember, a regular polygon is where all shapes, all sides, and all angles are congruent. In an irregular polygon, all sides and all angles are not necessarily congruent. So take a moment, pause the video if you have to, go through these 8 different shapes and figure out which one is a regular and which one is an irregular polygon. All right, so I hope you've had an opportunity to kind of figure out all 8 problems, and we're going to get to the solution. So once again, we wanted to figure out what shape is a regular and what shape is an irregular polygon. And so what I've done is I've kind of denoted that a check mark is regular and a red X is an irregular. So to start with our first shape here, we have a 5-sided shape. And if you remember from the previous video, a five-sided shape is considered a pentagon. So do we know, is a pentagon a regular or irregular shape? I mean polygon, excuse me. It is a regular polygon. Let's move on to this figure. For this one, we have what we call tick marks. Tick marks are denoting that both of these sides are the exact same. Both of these sides are congruent. However, this side, what we would call a hypotenuse, is not congruent to our other 2 sides. So would this be considered a regular or irregular polygon? It is a irregular polygon. Moving on to our next shape. This is a funny, awkward looking shape. We can kind of see that all sides of this shape are not quite congruent. They're not all the same. So we can kind of identify that this is not a regular polygon. It is irregular. Moving on to our next. Here, we're going to see how many sides we have here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think I counted that right. 10, yes. So a 10-sided shape is considered a decagon. And are all sides congruent? Are all angles congruent? Yes. So this is considered a regular polygon. Moving on to our next shape. Once again, we're going to count and see how many sides we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So here we have an 8-sided shape. An 8-sided shape, which is also called an octagon. Is that a regular or irregular polygon? It is a regular polygon. Now we're going to move on to a star, this star. Looking at this star, remember, regular means that all sides are congruent, all angles are congruent. So looking at this star, do I have all of my sides being the exact same? No, makes it an irregular polygon. Next, we have a what looks like a plus sign. And looking at this, we can see that it states that all sides are congruent. However, we cannot say the same for our angles. Our angles are not the same in our sides, even though our sides can be congruent. And then lastly, we have like a kind of like a almost like an arrow a little bit. We can see here that our sides are not equal to each other, which means this is also an irregular polygon. All right, so before we end this lesson, as usual, you guys are going to work on two assignments. One is a this or that polygon task. So when you click on the link, it will bring you up to a couple of slides with some different shapes, and you are going to identify what shape is regular and what shape is irregular. And then, as always, check your dream box for additional practice. All right, students, I will see you for our next lesson.